I think just being very honest about who I am and understanding that whether it's my Instagram, my cookbook, my matcha, these are all part of a lifestyle. They're not just products that I'm selling. It's really a lifestyle of living a healthy, mindful life with intention, spiritual, physical health. And between the lifestyle and just being very open and honest about who I am with no secrets, it's been really helpful.
Hi Schmoozers, welcome back to this week's episode of Schmoozing Time. For those of you that are new here, I'm David Cobby, and I'm on a mission to inspire Jews to be proud of their heritage and leverage their personal brands. Before I introduce this week's guest, I'd love if everyone could take a second to make sure they're following Schmoozing Time on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. This ensures that you'll stay up to date and never stress about missing an episode. Here with me today is someone who has changed how people think about food. Through her experience as a holistic chef and her matcha company, Leigh Leaf, she has leveraged her brand to inspire people to find wellness through food. She's also the author of the cookbook Plated, which contains many healthy, filling, and stress-free recipes that allow you to make and eat healthy food that you'll love. Please welcome to the show, health and food expert, Elizabeth Leigh Mandelbaum. Elizabeth, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Such a nice introduction.
Of course.
Thank you for having me. It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think you're when it comes to Jewish food, I think a lot of times we're bringing up the non-healthy part of Jewish food, and I think with Leigh Leaf and just your entire identity as a holistic chef, I think you can definitely offer a unique perspective on how to eat healthy, but also kind of have that balance. And me personally, I'm very excited to talk to you today because I think I myself have some concerns about my eating habits, how I can get better. And before we go into that, I always start off my episodes by talking about your Jewish identity, Elizabeth, and the reason why you're on here is because not only because you're a great chef and not only because you have a cookbook and you're doing amazing things in the health world, but also because you're a proud Jew. So to get things started, I want you to talk about your Jewish identity and your Jewish background.
Okay, so I actually grew up in El Paso, Texas. I did not grow up religious. My parents became religious when I was about 9-10 years old. Growing up in a small West Texas town, there are little to no Orthodox Jews, with the exception of the Chabad and maybe 5 other people. So, kind of being exposed to Orthodox was not something that I grew up with. And then when my family decided to become religious for various reasons, we ended up moving to Los Angeles. Just because of the opportunity for living an Orthodox life didn't really exist back in El Paso. And so, we moved here so that we could go to a Jewish school and have kosher food and restaurants and things like that. And so the first question people ask me is wasn't that so hard for you to just go from being completely irreligious to religious? We did go from irreligious to religious very quickly. It wasn't like we slid in through modern Orthodox, phases. It was kind of like night and day.
Wow.
Very quickly. But I think that I view being Jewish as a real soulful experience where I really believe that being Jewish it's the soul. It's the essence of who you are. And so going through this experience of not growing up not religious and then becoming religious was actually not so hard because I think it was so natural for us. For me, my sisters, I have a sister who's 2 years older than me even. And we all just not bought into it so fast, but we kind of fell in love with it because it was so innate to who we are, so deep down, to the soul of our being, that it was like fun almost. And all these years later, I still feel that way. I really do. I feel like being Jewish is a gift. I really feel like it's a soul thing. It's like you have a soul that's a Jewish soul, and you're part of a very, very, very small group of human beings that are given this type of soul. And I genuinely just feel lucky to be part of it.
Mm-hmm. I feel the exact same way as you. I think it's hard to appreciate Judaism sometimes. And
yes.
I mean, first of all, I think you might be the first person that I've met that has said that it was easy to kind of become more religious.
Okay. I think I was young enough that it wasn't like, I think there were other parts of the move and the transition that were a lot more traumatizing than the religious part of it itself. But in terms of becoming religious, it's kind of like anything. It's like starting a business, even having kids, getting married, whatever, going on a health journey, whatever it is that you're going into. It's not that it's an easy process, but when you know that it's so good and it's so worth working towards, it's like you get that motivation. It's like you get that boost of like, I'm doing this for a reason. So it's not necessarily that all, the laws and okay, now you can't watch TV on Saturday, and now we can't eat at this restaurant, and we can't just go here and do that. Not to say that stuff is not hard, but again, when you're going into it with the intention of, I'm doing this for a reason, and I appreciate and I'm grateful for that reason, it makes that process a lot easier. It's the same thing. You go to the gym, you're like, okay, this workout's not going to be easy, but I know what I'm going to get out of it is going to be so good that it gives you kind of that push to be like, I'm in it for the hard work, So I think Judaism is kind of just the same idea.
I think that's a great perspective to have, because I think a lot of the outside world looks at it as like, you can't eat bacon. Like you can't, watch TV on Shabbat. You can't drive a car on Shabbat. There's all these things, right, that Judaism tells us not to do. And I think it's really hard to look at Judaism as like, do this religion. But really, when it comes down to it, I think Judaism has a lot of discipline intertwined in it. It's so easy to go to McDonald's, get a bacon cheeseburger because they probably taste amazing and they're cheap and whatever. And it's so easy to do that. But the question is like, why does God, the question isn't, why does God not allow us to have a bacon cheeseburger? The question should be like, what is the point of God disciplining us what's the point of God having us be disciplined so that we only eat certain types of food? So that's a whole conversation that I think is so interesting. And, maybe you could touch on that more on how does Judaism help you become more disciplined?
So it's actually such a good question. And it's interesting that it's kind of nice that it ties into this whole like holistic eating, because I get that question from a food perspective all the time. Is like, how are you so disciplined to eat, this way? And what happens when you see this and you don't eat it or whatever? So it's really interesting but I think that's just kind of life in general is this concept of we're given, things right in front of us, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And it's our job to work hard to make those decisions. And so really every category falls into this concept, but specifically from, let's say, religion, I think that I never really viewed it as this until about within the last year or so, I would say. Before I really took it as, okay, this is, it is what it is. These are the rules. I know it was all kind of like faith for me. It was like, I know that this is the right thing to do. And so I'm going to do it, whether I like it or not, whether I agree with it or not. but I feel in my heart, and it wasn't pressured from community. I never really had that. I'll be honest with you. I never really what people thought about me. I probably probably too much so that I didn't care. You know, I had my moments that I'm not proud of for sure, or just difficult times in my life that I struggled more with things. But ultimately, I was like, okay, I'm doing this because I believe so strongly that God has a purpose for this. And so for that reason, I'll do it. It wasn't like for myself. It was like, I'll do it for God. And that's great.
Sure.
Now I think that I went through a lot the last year. My perspective has recently changed, whether it be through health and just life in general. I really see it as a protection. This is like a concept that I've really wholeheartedly experienced, and my soul has experienced this, where the Torah is a protection. And we're placed into this world where there's so much around us, and sometimes the rules feel like kind of like they're suffocating a little bit, where you're like, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't wear this, I can't. But ultimately, it's a protection for your soul. And so I think going into it being like, okay, as opposed to the way I thought about it before, which was, I'm just doing this because I was told to do it. I know it's the right thing to do, so I'm just going to do it. Now I'm like, I want to do this because I am protecting myself. I'm protecting my soul. You can break it down any way you want. You can talk about kosher. The laws of kosher are there, the same reason that we have health and wellness restrictions and diet restrictions, which are, you know, protecting your physical body. And I believe that kosher is the same thing. It's just protecting your physical body, because your physical body is really, you know, a vessel for your soul. And so whether it's healthy for your soul and healthy for your body, take it which way you want. It's a protection so that you don't, you know, enter this, you don't put things inside of your body that are not good for your soul or your physical body, however you want to look at it. You want to take dressing, you know, the way that people dress. You want to take a kippah, a hair covering. You want to take Shabbat. Any mitzvah, any law that you want to break down, ultimately is a protection for you. So it's not for anyone else, you know, it's not even for God necessarily. It's for you. It's God is giving you these rules as a protection for yourself. And so when you look at it like that, or at least for me, when I was able to kind of understand it from that perspective of, okay, I'm doing this as a protection, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I can do it, you know, and I'm excited to do it also. I'm like, it's kind of just changes your mindset.
I never thought of Judaism as a protection. I'm always somebody that thinks of it as more of like a discipline. But now that you said that, there's so much that you just said that we could go into. But I think this idea of protection and Judaism is extremely, extremely intertwined.
Yeah.
And I think there's just, you know, unlimited examples of how Judaism really protects you. And it's funny because, like, when you think of it like that, right? You think of Judaism, like keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, etc. In today's day and age, right, where anti-Semitism is at an all-time high, Judaism and protection are kind of like an oxymoron, right? Like,
a little bit.
If I'm wearing like these two necklaces in public, like,
you're scared.
Who knows what happens? I mean, like, but I think, you know, kind of flipping it on its head right here, I think one way that Judaism protects me is Shabbat. I think Shabbat serves as a protection for me because it literally physically makes me take a day off so that I'm not doing work. And I don't fully keep Shabbat. There was a point in my life where I did. But it's since, like, you know, growing up, I've always had Shabbat as being that day of rest. and making sure that I'm doing something at least a little different, like that has allowed me to really relax. And I think it's hard to do that. It's very, very hard to do that, right? When Shabbat, I mean, you're so busy, like you have kids, you have a business, you have so many social media followers, like there's so many things that you're doing, right? You have a cookbook. So Shabbat, that serves as like really my protection.
Yeah.
So for you, you kind of talked about your protection being food, right? How does that protection of, not eating pork, shellfish, etc., trickle in to your work as a holistic chef?
So I think that it's a good question. I think probably I would separate it even a little bit because, I would probably separate it because I think that as much as I really believe that like the body and the soul are connected. Like I'm very much into this mind, body, soul stuff. And so when the Torah says don't do this because it's not good for your soul, it's also not good for your body, right? So it's like the reason is for your soul, but it's also not, they go hand in hand. I think that the laws of kosher protect your soul versus your physical body. Because I think that there are some healthy shellfish out there that won't physically hurt your body,
Right.
or things like that. Eating a piece of not kosher meat isn't gonna, you can get a, beautiful lean piece of steak that's grass-fed and organic and all these things that's probably really good for your body,
Right.
but it's not kosher.
Mm-hmm.
So the laws of kosher are really protecting your soul. Now, what we learned from this concept of how food can physically affect, or spiritually, I should say, the laws of food, what you can and can't eat, are spiritually affecting your soul. Even more so, the spiritual world is way more powerful than the physical.
Right.
So if there are certain foods that we shouldn't eat to protect our soul, then there really should be a strict thing of how we should and shouldn't eat to protect our bodies. Right. So it's not necessarily the same exact types of food, but it's the same concept. Again, I wouldn't say that a piece of non-kosher meat is necessarily going to hurt your body. But again, that could potentially, I don't want to say it's going to hurt your soul, but I'm saying that the concept of not eating not kosher meat is to protect the soul. The same way, if you go and you're going to have, a piece of cake that has margarine and ultra processed seed oils and things like that, that will physically hurt your body in more ways than people know. It's the same concept of like, stay away from it to protect yourself. And yeah, I think, again, it's the concepts apply the same, the kosher versus the holistic. Not necessarily when you get into the detail of which foods, affect both, but the concept of don't eat this because it will physically or spiritually affect that part of you.
I think it's so hard to understand what you were just talking about, right? What you were just talking about was you not eating a piece of bacon. Obviously, it's not necessarily good for your body, but it's also not good for your soul. Why? We don't know. The thing is, like, we truly don't know, right? Why eating bacon is bad for the soul. All I know is that Hashem said, don't eat bacon. I don't eat bacon, and I have to trust him because the spiritual world and the physical world are unfortunately separate, right? There's
they mirror each other.
Sure.
So they're separate, but they will mirror each other. So they'll reflect, but they are separate, but they do reflect each other.
Right. So I guess to push back on that a little bit, if the spiritual world and the physical world reflect each other, why are people so wrapped up in materialistic things that don't impact your soul at all?
So I think that this is a really interesting concept, but intention is like a game changer.
Okay.
And some people are like, okay, well, that's stupid because I could just pretend that my intention is there.
Right.
But it's like, you can't lie to your soul and you can't lie to God. But your true intention of why you're going to do something or why you're doing something really affects the whole situation. It really affects your actions. It affects how those actions affect you.
Sure.
And I think that going into whatever it is, whatever mitzvah you want to talk about, whatever law or prohibition or whatever, and going in, why, again, back to your question of why are people so involved and obsessed with the material world, is the intention. There's nothing wrong with tapping into the material world because we were put on this planet for a reason. So if God wanted us to all live in a spiritual world, we would be there. There's a reason that we're here. There's a reason we're on planet Earth, wearing physical clothing, eating physical food, doing physical activity like exercising and trying to keep our bodies healthy. Like, these are all important things. And we're on this planet to be involved in those activities. But again, the intention has to be there. So why am I eating this? Why am I doing this? Why am I going here? Why am I, having a good time with my friends or going on date night with my spouse or, eating something that I really enjoy or wearing an outfit that I really like? Like, all of these things are not bad. They're good.
Right.
But the intention that you put into it will make a direct impact to your soul. And I think that being able to elevate, that's why we're given the mitzvahs, right? You wear you make a bracha on your food, you dress a certain way to elevate, it's all purposes to elevate the physical world to a spiritual level. So, you know what I mean? Like, we're on this planet, God puts our soul, which is something spiritual, into a physical body, into a physical world. Why? So that we can use our soul, which is spiritual, to elevate the physical things around us, right? Your soul will make a blessing using God's name on a piece of food that your physical body will eat, which then affects your soul and the rest of your body. So you're kind of like, again, the physical and spiritual are not the same thing, but they mirror each other. And so when your intention going into the world is strictly material and strictly what people think about me, and I'm only doing this because someone's going to think this, and I have to have this design or that, and I have to look a certain way. When that's your intention, your soul will see that, and it will mirror off your soul, and that's what your soul will become. But if you want to elevate your soul and elevate the physical around you, you want to live in this world with the intention of, I'm eating this, I'm wearing that, I'm doing that, because God put me on this planet and I want to make it as holy and pure as possible and do it in a way that elevates God's name. That intention will mirror off of your soul, and that's what you will experience.
I see exactly what you're saying. And
does that make
Elizabeth,
sense? I'm sorry if I'm not making sense.
No. This makes a lot of sense. You just brought up really super cool ideas in the past, 20 minutes. This idea of intention and this idea of the spiritual world mirroring the physical world. Like, these are both ideas that I think, you are extremely passionate about. Yeah. And, going back to this idea of intention, you intend to really educate yourself on things like this. And I think another subject that we can dive right into, and you were talking about processed foods and how horrible. I mean, it's the American diet is terrible. Like, we can have a whole podcast on the American diet. But I think before we get into that, right, you had some struggles yourself, right? Which is why you got into this realm of eating healthy and being a holistic chef. So if you don't mind sharing with us, tell me a little bit about your initial health struggles and how they motivated you to move into the health space and further educate yourself and become an expert in holistic eating?
Okay, so I grew up very healthy. You know, my parents were always very health conscious. You know, I grew up with this concept of like we weren't allowed to have really takeout growing up. My dad was very into home cooked food. It was like if we ever wanted takeout, we had to like sneak it. It was like my dad was very like, we don't eat at restaurants because they put all sorts of ingredients that you shouldn't be eating. Like I grew up with this concept. And then as I got older throughout high school, I became very into working out. I was in incredible shape. I was always working out, super focused on my health and eating healthy and clean. But this, I think the concept of healthy eating for me was like, you eat your, you know, you count your calories, you eat your, you know, your protein, chicken, vegetables, don't eat carbs, don't eat sugar. It was like a very typical American diet, like super, super typical. So I grew up like, you know, just again, throughout high school, I got married. This was my mindset, you know, just eating super clean, eating not so much, probably not as much as I probably should have been eating throughout the years, exercising a ton. This was what I knew pretty much. Then I started going through fertility treatments before my second baby. So this was like back in 2021. So during this time, I had one, whatever, I won't get into the whole thing, but I was going through the treatments and it wasn't working. And I was like, something is just wrong. I'm doing something wrong and it needs to be fixed. So I decided to just like learn all about the physical body, all about food. I'm like, food is my jam. Like I was in the middle of writing a cookbook. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like I'm obviously doing something wrong because it's not working. You know, it's not like I'm not healthy. Like I'm a healthy person. This shouldn't be happening. I need to fix it. So what I did was I just started breaking down the body and food separately and then understanding how they affect each other. So thinking, okay, if I'm on a fertility journey, which nutrients does my body need in order to make this happen? If I'm pregnant, what nutrients does my body need in order to form a baby? If I'm trying to lose weight, which nutrients does my body need in order to lose weight, to burn fat? If I'm just trying to maintain a, you know, whatever, every stage of life will require a different type of nutrient, you know, more nutrients than others. And which nutrients should I be focusing on? And which nutrients which food ingredients could be harmful for this stage in my life? Right. So the first thing, which we can get into after, that I really learned about was coffee, which I was a major coffee drinker. Could not leave my house if I didn't have a cup of coffee. Like I couldn't go to Starbucks to get one. It was like I needed it the second I woke up. And like we would go on vacation and my husband would be like, let's go to the breakfast downstairs, you know? And I'm like, no, like I need coffee now, like in my bed right now. And then we can go eat. But like the coffee needs to happen now. I was like super addicted. So that was the first thing. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to give this up. Like there's no way. And then I learned about other caffeinated drinks that were hot, that were, you know, kind of the same concept. And I came across matcha and I decided to give it a try. And when I tell you, I noticed the effects, like literally overnight. It was crazy. Like I just was like, this thing is gold. And I never went back to coffee since then. And not only that, but I never found, okay, we'll get into the matcha after, but
sure.
Anyway, I kind of, after figuring out the coffee and the matcha, I was like, okay, what else can I do to help my body kind of through this journey? So I was very, very much protein-based, eating tons of chicken, not so many vegetables, not really so many carbs, just like a lot of protein, chicken, eggs, meat, and things like that, and working out. And that was kind of like my stage. And what I learned was like, okay, but you know, for fertility purposes and for pregnancy, your body needs folate and vitamin D, and your body needs omega-3s and all these nutrients that you don't find in protein. So I was like, okay, most people will just put you on all these supplements, which I did speak to someone about at one point, and she was like, oh yeah, just take all these supplements. And I was like, there's got to be another way. So learning about all the different foods that contain these nutrients, cutting back on, not that I was lacking protein, but not being so obsessed with protein and working out, cutting back on that and adding in tons of greens, arugula, kale, tons of avocado, almonds, fats, coconut, all these different things that specifically target fertility and specifically target that part of your body. That whole concept to me was like, oh my gosh, like this is what holistic health is. This concept of I can heal my body through food, because our body lives off of nutrients. And if you're not giving it those nutrients, it's going to start sucking it from other places of your body. And then eventually it's just going to stop working, and it's not going to do what it wants you to do or what you want it to do.
Right.
So this concept of my body needs these nutrients at this stage of my life, which foods contain those nutrients, and then going and making sure I'm eating a huge giant bowl of arugula every day, a certain amount of nuts, an avocado, like every day, just making sure I'm eating those foods. And that was really kind of the awakening of holistic health. And it worked. I changed my gut health, felt amazing afterwards. I don't know. It was like the most life-changing. Like, I can't even stop smiling when I talk about it, because the way I felt before I learned all of this and created like holistic health methods, and the way I feel now, I'm like just a different person. I feel so much better.
I'm so glad. And first of all, thank you for sharing that story. I know it's hard to talk about, personal issues, especially when it comes to fertility. So
yeah,
I always appreciate my guests that are vulnerable, because like I'm a very vulnerable person. So thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
And to touch on what you were just saying, like eating healthy makes the biggest difference in the world. And I could tell you, for me, I was at a stage in my life, 9th, 10th grade, not 9th, 10th grade, freshman year of college, right? Where I was overweight. I just gone through pretty bad COVID, and I had experienced depression, and I started eating healthier and going to the gym. And ever since that point, like my life has just been completely uphill from there, because I'm eating healthy. Like, eating healthy is actually the biggest game changer in the world. And I think there's, it's so easy to point fingers at the American diet, right? Like I was just doing before, the processed food, the different oils, the sodium, the sugar, whatever it is. There's so many things. But then also, there are really, really dangerous fad diets that actually cause you to become hungrier and become like like not eating food, right? For example, it doesn't help you, right? Like eating no food, it doesn't help you. Like, I was at a point in my life where I was tracking all of my calories, and it got to a point where I was very obsessive about it. It was like I was like trying to eat, like it was ridiculous as a 18, 19-year-old man trying to eat 1,500 calories, 1,800 calories a day. Like, it's ridiculous. I mean, listen, it worked, but it's not sustainable long term. It's I'm telling you right now, it is not sustainable long term. And there's so many issues with how we eat today. I mean, you mentioned caffeine, right? Coffee. It's so easy to get hooked on caffeine for two reasons. One, because it keeps you full, right? Like when you drink coffee, when you have a lot of caffeine, that keeps you really full. And two, obviously the effects of caffeine keep you alert, awake, etc. So there's a lot of things out there that are extremely dangerous. And one thing that I think for me that I personally haven't tried is matcha. And you took it upon yourself to, A, you started Flow Matcha, but then B, you created your own matcha company. So how did that transition come to fruition? Like, was this there was a need in the market for a matcha company? Like, tell us about how you decided to create Leigh Leaf.
So I started Leigh Leaf because, kind of going back to the story before of when I started drinking matcha, I fell in love with the effects of it. I was like, this is amazing. And I started doing all my research on matcha and how the Japanese people live longer because they drink matcha, than anywhere else around the world, and all these health benefits of anti-aging and skin and, with just cell health and all these different things, and gut health was a big one. And so falling in love with the effects of matcha, but then being like, okay, but it just doesn't taste good. Like, I needed something in the morning that I was like looking forward to drinking. You wake up in the morning, you're excited to eat or drink something.
Right.
And I just wanted to like love that the way that I used to love my coffee. And when I tell you, I tried probably 100 different matcha companies, and I tried some that were good, that tasted good, but they were not organic, which bothered me, of course, because the way that matcha is made, for anyone who doesn't know, is they have green tea leaves in Japan, and then they grind them into a powder. So it's essentially a leaf grounded up into a powder. And when these leaves are being sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and other chemicals to preserve freshness, you're just drinking all of those chemicals. So to me, I was like, okay, if it tastes good, that's one thing, but like, I'm not drinking it if it's not organic. And then all the organic ones that I would try were like so gross. They were just super thin or light or brown or grassy or bitter. And I was like, can't someone just make one that's organic and tastes good? Like, why is this so hard? And I really did so much research trying to find one. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself, because when you can't find something right, you just do it yourself. And so I did. I reached out to a friend of mine who is great in just everything. And we partnered up. He's a family member. And we partnered up to create Leigh Leaf. And we did. We literally created the perfect matcha. Like, I have to say, it's really good. People who try other matchas who are like, matcha's disgusting. You think you can try to convert me and not going to do it? You think you can get me off of coffee? No way. And the amount of people I have proven wrong makes me so happy. Like,
Okay.
I get so much excitement and joy when people tell me I've tried so many and they're all gross. Like, there's no way yours is that different. And I'm like, okay, good. Another one. Yay. And then they tried and they're like, wow, it really is so different. So I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it.
I will just say I'm in that boat too. Like, I personally do not like matcha. So
Okay, we'll
you
have
might
to get...
Yeah, I know. But I'm willing to be open-minded, because I think coffee, right? It gets redundant after a while, and I think, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but does matcha have less caffeine than coffee, or is it comparable?
So it's pretty comparable. It is a little bit less, but it's not so much the caffeine that makes the difference. First of all, the way that coffee is processed is extremely not healthy. Unless you're drinking coffee like in Colombia or Costa Rica, where they're like picking the coffee beans from the floor and grinding it up themselves in front of you. Any other way, it's been processed. If it's not organic, they're doing the same thing with the pesticides in the coffee beans. Just the process of coffee is a very toxic process. And of course, coffee is very acidic and has all these other different things. It's not even so much the caffeine that's bad for you. It's coffee itself. The coffee beans have other different compounds in it that are harmful for the body, the teeth, all these different things. Whereas matcha is a green tea leaf, and it's jam-packed with antioxidants, polyphenols, which are just the number one anti-aging cell health. They protect, your cells. They help prevent cell oxidation, has all these different health benefits because it contains all the different multivitamins. It's great for detoxing. It helps the gut tremendously. The amount of people who are like, wow, you healed my gut just from switching out coffee to matcha. So aside from the caffeine, there's all these different health benefits and nutrients that you'll find in matcha that you know, not only won't find in coffee, but coffee can have other compounds that are just not good for you. So matcha has an amino acid called L-theanine. L-theanine, they actually put it in a lot of like anti-anxiety medications. They put it in like what are they called? Like melatonin sleeping pills. They'll put like L-theanine in it. Anything to help the body relax, because it's a natural amino acid that calms the nervous system. So the green tea leaves actually contain this natural amino acid. And so what happens is with the caffeine together, they're able to give you like a perfectly balanced kind of like calm focus, because the caffeine is kicking your brain. So you're like, you have the energy. The L-theanine is calming your nervous system. So there's no jitters. There's no caffeine spike or crash, because the L-theanine is like absorbing all the caffeine and then releasing it slowly. So it's really just like your mind feels sharp, but the rest of your body is just like chilling. It's kind of cool.
Wow. That is foreign concept to me, because I've been drinking coffee since I've been pretty young.
I mean, we all, ninth grade, everyone starts drinking coffee. It's just, you go to high school and you're like, I can't open my eyes. What do I do?
Yes.
Take coffee. That's what we all look for.
Yes. So I guess like matcha, right? I would imagine, because it's being produced, you're outsourcing it from another country. You're making sure that there's no pesticides involved and it's organic. It's more expensive by nature, right? And you have to make it more expensive. But how are you positioning it so that it is getting in the hands of the right people, and becoming more accessible so that people avoid drinking coffee?
So I think it's less about making it accessible, because it is accessible. It's, obviously it's like anything with, you go to the grocery store and you want organic apples versus non-organic apples. The non-organic apples are coming from a farm that's been sprayed with pesticides. So naturally, because they're preserving their quantity they're going to produce, they can lower their price, because they know that by the end of the day, if they're planting 10 apples, they're getting 99. I mean, 100 apples, they're getting 99 apples out of it, and then they can go sell them. When you have an organic farm, if you're going to farm 100 apples, you might end up with 50, because they're not being preserved. They're just super fresh. That's why they have to be more expensive, because the bugs, the animals come and eat them. They don't last as long because they're not being sprayed, all these different things. So just by nature, when you have something that's fresher, that's more organic, it's just kind of the way it works. It just is going to be more expensive.
Right.
But I think in terms of making it, so it is accessible. They're for sure accessible. In terms of a price point, I would say that would be like something to just, that's the only thing to consider, is the same thing as like if you're buying something that's, you buy a thing of whatever it is, something that will sit on the shelf versus something that's going to sit in the fridge. It's, however long it will last. But in terms of educating people, I think that's kind of like something that's been a little bit really rewarding and exciting, is because a lot of people don't know. They're like, oh, matcha is just a green drink that tastes like grass. Like, I don't need to drink that. But then when they start learning about all the health benefits, I posted a reel the other day about how, like, for whitening teeth naturally. And it was like, I got so many messages from it, because it's something that people just don't know. There's a lot of different education points to make about how coffee will literally stain your teeth, because it contains an acid that will weaken the enamel, and then you're drinking a dark drink that's going to stain it, and there's nothing there to protect it. And then on the flip side, when you're drinking matcha, it contains an acid, a compound that will strengthen the enamel, and with all the antioxidants, it's literally going to whiten your teeth. Just educating people on what matcha can do, how dangerous coffee could be potentially, And, but really for me, it's not even about getting people off of coffee because, like,
Sure.
it's a free country. Everyone can do whatever they want. To me, it's more like, this drink is amazing. You need to try it. And then most people end up stopping to drink coffee on their own because they're like, okay, you're right. I don't need this. But the matcha is really great. And I think that just for me, having educated so many people on what it can do for your body, how it can help you in so many ways in health, and in focus and in all these different things has been a really good way to just kind of get people to start drinking it.
Sure. Yeah. I think that the education piece is really lacking around eating healthy and this idea of a holistic diet. And, there's so many valuable things that you said on this episode, talking about just what nutrients your body needs to perform at its best, right? Like the whole chicken, the whole only eating protein thing, like, no, that doesn't work. Like, you need carbs, you need vegetables. So there's a lot of value add that you provided on this episode. And I think education is a big part of that. And I think it's also a big part of, your personal brand and why you've been so successful. So, whether it's being an entrepreneur, having a cookbook, being successful on social media, there's a lot about your personal brand that has really, in the past, has been super, super successful. So I guess, like, education, I would say, is like one part of that, just from talking to you. But aside from education, what has been the key to success and elevating your personal brand?
I think that making it a not selling, but I would say that it's a lifestyle. It's not like I am a person who jumped on and was like, I want to sell this product at this price to try to make money, or I want to, post X and Y just for the sake of posting it, or whatever, writing a cookbook, just, again, for the business side of it. For me, it really is a lifestyle. And I also have a storyline, which a lot of people, if they've been following from the beginning, have seen kind of the transition, which I feel like is very personable. And so I think that a lot of people, they see my lifestyle, which is, all the different parts, the good, the bad, everything in between. I'm not shy. I'm an open book. I share everything. I'm not, someone who shies away from my hardships, my struggles, my downfalls, my mistakes. I'm very honest and open to everything about myself. I'm extremely grateful for the people who have helped me, impacted me, influenced me, stood by my side, all these different things. But I think just being very honest about who I am and understanding that my, whether it's my Instagram, my cookbook, my matcha, these are all part of a lifestyle. They're not just products that I'm selling. It's really a lifestyle of living a healthy, mindful life with intention, spiritual, physical health, and I think it's just, it's a whole lifestyle. It's a package, and between the lifestyle and just being very open and honest about who I am with no secrets and no, I'm not embarrassed about anything. I'm very open. So I think between the two, it's been really helpful.
Literally going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode and having intention. I think you're so intentional about what you do. And, this idea of like not really caring about, what other people think, but also adding in that element of gratefulness and appreciation. There's so much to talk about in that space too.
Yeah.
Just thanking the people, being grateful for literally having the most basic things in the world. Like, I think that comes with, that's been from my experience, that's helped me a lot get through
Yeah.
a lot of things and have success. And I mean, Elizabeth, we could have this episode go on for a couple of hours, and I don't think we touched on a sliver of the health aspects and dieting and holistic chef. But I want to thank you again for coming on the episode. But before we officially end the episode, where can people find you on social media?
So my Instagram is elizabethlee.m, and from there you can find all my matcha, my cookbook. My matcha is Leigh Leaf. You can shop it at leighleaf.com. All my information is there. I have a lot of informational content about health, wellness, gut health, fertility, hormone health, hormone balancing, all sorts of different stuff, bunch of fun recipes. I like to keep my stories going every day because, I get a lot of like interaction on my stories. And so it's fun to be able to just engage with people. So I try to post daily recipes or food ideas and just health hacks and just anything I can. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's make sure we're following Elizabeth on the socials. I don't know about you guys, but I think Elizabeth has convinced me to at least try her matcha.
Yeah.
So I'm a stubborn person. I'm not going to say that I'm going to like it. I'm going to go with an open mind.
That's fine. I'm all for the honesty. I'm all for the honesty.
I'm ready to drink matcha. And I think it's so important to share this episode with somebody. Elizabeth has provided you with immense value on how to eat healthier, the benefits of matcha, how she connected with Judaism so quickly and so spiritually. There's so much that Elizabeth talked about on this episode. So share this with somebody who wants to learn more about connecting with Judaism on a spiritual level, or about eating healthy and about being a holistic, healthier person. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. Make sure to follow Schmoozing Time on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Also, make sure to follow Schmoozing Time on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on. Until next time, keep schmoozing.